everyone. Thank you for gathering with us. Thank you for taking time to spend with us as part of the RGV Legislators Tour. I want to welcome all the legislators and their staffs and a lot of the local VIPs that we have here in the Valley. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. We're going to just give you a lay of the land. I'm Teclo Garcia. I'm the CEO of the Mission Economic Development Corporation. We're going to have a panel here that's focused on water. We're going to go through that, and then after that, we're going to have dinner just right outside the building. It's all covered, it's all heated, and the dinner is going to be catered by and served by the Texas Taco Queen, according to Texas Monthly, Mission's own Annalise Taqueria. So here we live. It's delicious. If you don't line up and get something right away, don't be surprised if you're at the end of the line, there's nothing left. We won't make more. We're like the place in Austin that serves barbecue. Once it's gone, it's gone. No, thank you again for being here. Welcome to the Seed Building. Those of you who don't know the building, this is an old Kmart, 55,000 square feet of innovation space, of small business space, and we're very happy to be in this facility. This is, I think, unique in this region. It might be the largest one in the state. We've got 22 entrepreneurs or small businesses and nonprofits in here. We have a coffee shop in here. We have a brewery in here, and we've got a lot of really high-performing people and businesses inside the facility. We're really proud. I want to thank our board for supporting our mission, and really appreciate it. Thank you. Very quick, before we get into introductions, is also want to welcome everybody to Mission. Mission's about 100,000 people strong. We're on the west side of the RGV. We are a unique city. Is home to the great Senator Juan Chuy Hinojosa. Senator, this is your hometown. Thank you for being here. Those of you who don't know, it's also home to the grapefruit, as you can see right in front of you. And then it's also home to the famous real football coach named Tom Landry. And Lloyd Benson as well, Secretary of the Treasury, and Senator Lloyd Benson is also from Mission. But thank you for being here. Let's get into it. Let's get into the H2O Mayor. I want to recognize you. I know you're not up here, not feeling as well, but thank you for being here, Mayor. We really appreciate you and your support and helping us put this together. Thank you. Of course, again, there's lots of VIPs here, but I do want to recognize one other person before we start, and maybe he can stand up for us. Newly minted Senator Hinojosa, the other Senator Hinojosa. Thank you. So I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Again, we're going to talk about the needs for that Mission has and the region has for water. Very important, obviously, across the state. This is not unique to Mission, but certainly we want to delve into, and we've got into that, and we've got some really great folks on the panel. And I'll start to my left with introduction and let them introduce themselves. Mike, go ahead.
Let's see. Good evening. My name is Mike Perez. I'm the city manager of the city of Mission. I've been in local government for 48 years, so I've been city manager for cities in Hidalgo County and in Cameron County, and I'm happy to be here.
Good evening. My name is Dante Galeazzi. I'm the president and CEO of the Texas International Produce Association. We're based here in Mission as well, and we're representatives for both the fresh produce grown here in Texas and the more than 13 billion pounds of fresh produce that is imported from Mexico through Texas.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is David Fuentes. I'm Hidalgo County Commissioner for Precinct 1. I've been on, my term started about 8 years ago. I'm starting my third term. Welcome, Senator Hinojosa, and obviously thank you to Senator Chuy, who's been a great representative for us as well. But to all the representatives and senators that just got sworn in, we wish you the best of luck this legislative session.
Good evening. I'm Eddie Lucio, and like Daniel Silva said, I'm lucky to even be here, according to him. That's what he said. I'm lucky to even be here. I spent 16 years in the state legislature, state representative. Of those 16 years, I spent 14 years on the Natural Resources Committee and got to do a lot of great things in water, part of the creation and implementation of the SWIFT program. Learned a lot about the diverse way we plan, fund, and operate water throughout the state of Texas, and it's unique in this region, and I look forward to meeting some of the new members. Senator Cook, welcome. It's good to have you. We look forward to working with you, and the other day I had someone call and say, I need you to call Senator Hinojosa. I'm like, which one? So we're going to have to figure that out. But it's great to be on this panel with such distinguished people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We really appreciate you being here and taking time out. The lake levels, as many of you are very well aware of, for the Rio Grande Valley, where we get our water from, Lake Amistad and Falcon Lake, or reservoirs. Falcon is at about 15%, give or take, and Amistad is about 26%. Some of that information you'll see flashing over the screens in front of you. They're about a 15-second interval for you to read. So that's our daily reality. And we're trying to find ways to how to keep that up, how to get our water from Mexico, how to find alternate water sources, etc. That's part of the panel here, is try to help educate you and raise the awareness of the situation that we're in. This is a dire situation for agriculture, it's a tough situation for cities, and it also impacts growth. In the last 4 years, Mission has issued out about $400 million in residential building permits, so it's about $100 million a year, and that can't happen forever if we don't have a good water source. So that is concerning for us, and this is something that our panelists are dealing with every day. I'd like to start with Commissioner Fuentes and talk about some of the things he's been working on, some of you are aware of, but to find that alternative source, to find a sustainable source, and I think everyone is proud of what he does, but I'll let him explain where he's at with his projects. Commissioner?
Thank you. I think we're starting with the least qualified person up here and we're moving up. So, we'll start that way. We have some handouts going out. We wanted to give you something to look at, something to read, so that you can familiarize yourself with the project that we have proposed in Hidalgo County. So back in 2012, I believe, the Texas Water Development Board gave authorization for a study to be made whether we could reclaim water off of our drainage ditches and clean it to where it became potable water. I know some people say potable. I'm just going to say potable because it goes in a jug, right? So drinking water. And a lot of what, when I first started back in 2017, the first thing we did was we started with the testing of this and trying to get everything situated so that we could prove that it was possible to do this. It had never been done before. Now, reclaimed water is not necessarily a new concept, but it is when it comes to end user use. When it comes off of drainage ditches and not necessarily from the Rio Grande River, which is where we get a lot of our water. So a lot of testing had to be done so that we could check the seasonality of it, make sure that we met all of the Texas Water Development Board requirements as far as whether it would be able to provide water even in a drought situation. So we went through that entire testing process here in the last year, and we finally got TCEQ to give us the approval of the testing protocol and ultimately giving us the green light to move towards drawing up the plans and specifications for creating a water plant. Now we have 3 designated spots along the drainage, the main drain ditch here in Hidalgo County, which runs along the northern part of Hidalgo County. Starting in the Edinburgh area, a lot of people might kind of know this area as the Raymondville drain, or at least the start of the Ray drain. This is where the main drain and the Raymondville drain meet. That essentially would be one of the locations that we have proposed where we could reclaim water off of these drainage ditches. Now, where does it come from? It comes from a lot of our communities, the City of McAllen, City of Mission, Alton. Everybody locally drains into a county drainage ditch. And the main one that's north of the expressway is the North Main Drain. So all of these laterals that run through cities ultimately end up in that North Main Drain. So at that connection point with the Raymondville Drain and moving eastward, we have another proposed plant in the Engelman area, which is a little bit smaller. The Engelman Irrigation District has some retention capacities there because they've had provided water in this area for some time. The third spot in Hidalgo County is at the most eastern point, which is where kind of the IBWC, the floodway that we all cross when we're going into Mercedes, that turns to the north. It usually runs along the south, along the Rio Grande River, but it diverts there in Mercedes. And when it goes up north, the main drain and the IBWC floodway almost touch. And at that connection point, there's about 225 acres that we purchased from the Hidalgo County Drainage District, purchased 225 acres, primarily for the purpose of flood mitigation. If anybody that's been here since 2018 knows, we had 3 consecutive years where we had very catastrophic flooding due to heavy rains. They weren't hurricanes, they were just rain events. In the first event in June of 2018, we had 18 inches of rainfall in the Mid-Valley area over in the Precinct 1, eastern part of Hidalgo County, bordering Cameron County. The next day we had 16 inches fall in the Mission area, in the western part of Hidalgo County. And it takes about 24 hours for that floodwaters to reach eastern Hidalgo County. And we saw that we had those 34 inches of rain eventually ended up in our drainage ditches, and the water started cresting in those ditches and just started overflowing. So we had rainwaters we just could not get rid of. So that diversion point, I know I'm taking a little bit, but it is important for you guys to understand that we're providing flood mitigation in all of these all of these collection sites. That 225 acres has many square feet of water that it can hold. It's going to be about 10 feet deep. We've already purchased it, secured it, and that's where we did our initial testing for that TCEQ protocol. We also have 1 floating permit in Willacy County that is also licensed or approved for 5 million gallons. So out of the 4 proposed areas, 3 of them are approved for 5 million gallons a day, and the Engelman one is a smaller one, has 3 million gallons a day. So we could eventually, once everything is built out and all the transmission lines are built and all of the reverse osmosis tanks and filtration systems are put in place, we could be creating 18 million gallons of water every single day that would otherwise just end up in the Laguna Madre. So for us, we already know that through our performance, we believe that we would be a cheaper alternative than desalinization, a regular desal plant that takes water out of the Gulf. So we know that it would be not necessarily cost effective because it's not going to be as good as what we get out of the Rio Grande, but it wouldn't be as expensive or the most expensive option when we talk about cleaning water and using it for end user, residential or commercial end user. Now, this is important. We just lost the last sugar mill in the state of Texas. We lost 500 jobs because they didn't have water. And that is a very difficult thing to accept when we have a remedy that's right down the road from there, like not even 3 or 4 miles away from that sugar mill or where the sugar mill used to be. So we believe that this is a great investment of money. We've invested already $35 million through different bond issuances to create the mitigation component. Now what we need from the state is we actually need the funding to build our first water plant. We've already gone through legislative past sessions where we are authorized as a drainage district to sell revenue bonds. So when we're able to produce money from selling this water, we'll be able to use it for capital improvements or to maintain the water plants as needed. So it's a really innovative project. We were awarded a state green award, the Raincatcher Award last year, and we're very proud of that. It's an exciting project. We just need to find the funding, and sorry for my very long summary, but that's our project. We're very proud of it. Thank you.
No, exactly. That's what we're seeking is innovative solutions to the issues that we have. It just can't be, hey, let's wait and see if it rains. I'd like to talk to Mr. Chairman at the end of the table here. Commissioner was talking about a lot of the water going out. You've dealt with water districts with water coming in, right? Maybe you can expound a little bit on some of the challenges they're seeing and see if what they're looking for in the future, because they play a major role here. They have for 100 years, but there's things that they need help with, and maybe you can shed some light on that.
I just want to clarify, did you say drainage districts?
No, irrigation.
Irrigation.
Sorry.
I mean, if I could just take a little bit of a broader approach, we're unique in that we rely on deliveries to our water source, which is mainly the Rio Grande River by Mexico. And for those of you traveling from other parts of the state, imagine having to work not only with your neighbors, but if your neighbor was another country, and trying to enforce a treaty that is hard to because it's a federal treaty, and have them be accountable for the deliveries into your water source. It's been extremely challenging. And when we try to reach out to our federal counterparts and have the State Department assist us in enforcing that treaty, we have not always got the best responses. Mexico delivers when basically their channels are full, and it's just because they have to. It's never intentional. And so that's become extremely challenging. I think fundamentally we undercharge for water, and we have such a diverse way, so many different types of entities that sell water, retail water to customers, and some of them are cities, and the cities are blessed with a diverse revenue source that they can supplement the cost of selling of water, and they suppress the prices of water. But when you have districts that all they do is sell water, it's very hard to justify those costs, even though they're more realistic and more in line with the actual cost of producing water. I hope that makes sense. We have a very mixed way that we plan for and sell water in the state of Texas. What I will tell you is we're running out of water. Absolutely running out of water. We have Senator Perry, who has a plan to channel water or pipe water from where it's abundant to where it is most scarce. And that's interesting. And trust me, nobody wants water moving out of their region, but what are the alternatives? If we want to compare ourselves to the power sector, in the power sector, we supplement and incentivize innovative technologies to help meet our power demands. But we have not done that in water, right? We have not supplemented or invested in, provided incentives for mass desalination projects, which those technologies are still extremely expensive because our governments haven't invested in them. Because by and large, there's not that demand. We haven't turned on the faucet at home enough times and water doesn't come out. The people demand it, right? If you remember Uri, you're without power for a couple of days, and then for the next 4 years, the grid has become a campaign slogan or a campaign topic. So water is one of those things that very few people focus on, but it is vastly important for what we do. And I think the future growth of water has to be like projects like reclamation, gray water, reuse, conservation, innovative technologies, getting desalination, seawater desalination to be more cost effective, providing incentives to do that, revising our water treaty in South Texas, and taking water. I think Senator Perry's really onto something. If there's places where it's abundant and places where it's needed, how can we share that resource? But we're going to have a very interesting session on water.
For sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're exactly right. If anyone looks at that Water for Texas webpage and on their home site, there's a dot for every reservoir in the state. And if you click on them or roll over them, they tell you what the level is of those lakes. And they're color coded. And it's real apparent once you look at it that most lakes in North and East Texas are blue because they're almost full, if not 100% plus. And anything really west of 35 to the southwest or to the west are nearly empty. And so moving water, as Mr. Lucio says, is an interesting concept because that's something that we haven't really concentrated on. Dante deals with agriculturalists and businessmen from all over the state. And he hears this, I'm sure, firsthand. So we'll let him expound on what the ag sector is talking to him about regarding water.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'm going to take a step further back than Eddie did here. Let me give you guys a little bit of numbers to go with the story that you're hearing here. So the Rio Grande Valley gets 90% of our fresh water from the river. Okay, that's huge. We're not like other people where we can drill down. We would have to drill down to 1,500 feet before we could start finding fresh water. And even at that depth, we're not entirely sure that that water is going to be fresh enough that we can drink from it. We're probably going to have to treat that water. So 90% of our fresh water comes from the river. You have seen a decline in all of the sources that bring water to the Rio Grande River over the last 30 years of 33%. Okay? So that's not just Mexico not complying. You've got Colorado and New Mexico are using more of their water. Texas is storing more of its water, so we don't have those inflows coming in. So overall, we have less water. Here in the Rio Grande Valley, we are one of only 3 regions in the United States of America that can produce fruits and vegetables during the middle of the winter. So we are very blessed. We have more than 550,000 irrigated acres here in the valley. We are one of the few places in the country where we can also produce ag year-round. So you've got the better part of 10,000 jobs directly involved in that production. That doesn't include the guys selling seeds, chemicals, trucks, boxes, pallets, all of that. So you have an entire ecosystem here in the valley that depends on agriculture and water, as do our residents. You have more than 50% of the 1.3 million people living in the Rio Grande Valley are in unincorporated cities. Those unincorporated towns. Those towns rely on those irrigation districts. The districts move 85% of the water through the valley. So I threw a lot of numbers at you. Basically, that's to tell you this. We depend on water and we don't have it. That's the message you're hearing. We have been looking at creative means, but at the end of the day, we've got to see funding and resources come in, right? Water is where electricity and the data grid and the internet were 30 years ago. We saw there was a shortage, people wanted it, needed it, and we made the investments. We haven't done that with water, right? You heard it said well. We turn on the faucet, and there's always water. Our friends across the river, though, in Monterrey, they've had 2 years now where they've had multiple times where they have only been allowed water for 2 hours a day, every 3rd day. Can you imagine with your family trying to figure out, okay, don't nobody use the bathtub, because we're going to fill the bathtub, and that's the water we need for the next 3 days. I can't imagine that. I absolutely cannot imagine that. And so that is the impact that we are continuing to see here in the valley, especially in the agriculture area. And so we are at a pinnacle now. Our farmers are already moving away from crops. They are already trying to decide, do I grow this versus that? Do I do this or that? We've had companies here make massive layoffs. You heard about the sugar industry going down. That was 500 jobs at the sugar mill. That doesn't include the other 300 farmers who were farming that crop. That doesn't include the guys selling the tractors, or the seed, or the chemical, or the insurance, or the banks, or all the other industries that depended on that. Our ecosystem is collapsing because of the shortage of water. We have got to see that investment come in, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit, so I'm not going to jump the gun yet, but that's the situation.
No, thank you. No, you're exactly right, and that's what we're seeing firsthand in economic development. For us, we have questions. Just a quick story, Mike, before we get started. We were dealing with a company who wanted to possibly build a plant here in Mission, and so once we started talking to the site selector, we said, hey, what kind of plant is this? And they said, oh, it's a manufacturer. Okay, what kind of manufacturer? Oh, it's a water bottling company. And we said, okay, they need this much water per day, et cetera, on and on. And then when we met with them in person, they said, look, we understand where you're getting your water from, but what is your second water source? And we just kind of looked at them and said, there is no second water source. And so we haven't heard from them since. And I mean, I'm joking about it, but it's a serious matter. I mean, that's 200 jobs, a $200 million investment that we could have used here. And so that's where we're at. Mike can probably talk to us about what this means for cities. You usually at the front end of this in terms of users. We know it's important for agriculture, but cities deal with the water and water shortages all the time.
Well, like I said before, I've been in the business for a long time. You know, I was a city manager in Mercedes and Harlingen and McAllen and Westlaco going now here. And we depend on a hurricane to fill up our reservoir. And then we depend on Mexico. When that treaty was put into place, Mexico didn't have all of the dams that were feeding our dams. It's completely different now. And so we've been through this several times. And even we've had this whole issue of what are we gonna do? But we're also spoiled here in South Texas. The cheapest water to treat is surface water, river water. Our water, depending on the city, is anywhere between $2.20 a thousand to maybe almost $3. Now, if you talk to the people down here in South Texas, they say that's very high. Go to Central Texas and you pay $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 per thousand. And so part of the problem that we have is that we've gotten used to cheap water. So that's gonna have to be changed, and that paradigm's gonna have to change. But we can't control Mexico. I mean, they're gonna give us the water when they decide they can, and that's it. And so we have to start looking at secondary sources. And one of those is taking a look at RO plants and drilling wells. And exactly right, the water is very brackish. So you can't drill it and then put chlorine in it and then put it into the system. You're gonna have to treat it. You know, you run through an RO unit, on the cheap side, if the water's not bad, $4 or $5 per thousand. And that's just to treat the water. And so we're looking at how do we end up stretching the water that we have coming down the Rio Grande River. So one, are we gonna have to take a look at wells, and we can't punch too many wells in because the old saying, the well's gonna go dry, is exactly right. Now, we don't all agree that we probably need to have a conservation district, but some way, somehow, we can't have everybody punching wells, putting holes in the ground and pulling out water. So it's gotta be regulated some way. Now, how that's gonna be done, we don't know. We were talking to the senator earlier, because some of us don't all agree, and that's the way that we should address the problem. But some way, somehow, we're gonna start drilling wells, and we're gonna have to start putting RO units in our place. Can't do it all RO. It's gonna have to be partial RO and partial surface, and so that we can kind of blend that cost and slowly start increasing the cost of water. And we say the Rio Grande Valley and it's tropical. It's not tropical. It's arid down here, you know. And we all like to have green grass. And let me tell you, I have the irrigation districts are real good because I've been in this business a long time. So they all call me and they're driving down and I'm down in the city manager. Look at your citizens watering the street, and I can't water my crops. And that's a good point. So we're going to have to change how we do our landscaping and be a little bit more regulatory. Now, nobody likes new rules. Nobody likes laws. But I don't think we have a choice. Here's the other thing. We have irrigation districts that are responsible for pumping the water from the river and then taking it to the city. The furthest city is Raymondsville. They lose about pretty close to 60% of the water. If you pump 100 gallons and you put it in the ditch, by the time it gets to Raymondsville, they'll get 40 gallons because the rest seeps through the dirt canals or evaporates. The irrigation districts, the cities, we can go to the Water Development Board and we can get grants and we can get low interest loans. The irrigation districts can't. I think the irrigation districts ought to have the same access to that money because even Mission, who is that real close to the river, we get penalized 12 to 15% of what's pulled from the river before it gets to our water plant. And so if they can have access to more monies to line those canals or put those canals in pipes, that's going to save water. We're not going to be able to do it all with well, and we're not going to be able to do it all off the river. So we're going to have to be, one, is be very conservative and use conservation to save what we have. And then we have to look for multiple choices. I think that's about all I'm going to say about water. I can go on, but that's it.
Well, there's a lot more to talk about. But let me ask Mr. Lucio, you obviously in the House for many years. Recently, the Texas Water Development Board, or actually the Senate and the legislature provided lots of money for the Water Development Board at last session, right? Can irrigation districts ever get to that point to receive some of that funding?
I'm sure, and the budget just came out, Senator, I believe, and I believe Senator Perry wanted $5 billion for water, and he thought that was enough to just keep things moving. And I think they started at $2.8 billion, which is a lot of money, but then again, only half of what our subject matter expert in the legislature thinks is needed. And it's dire, but I don't want anyone to walk away with doom and gloom, because I think there's a lot of smart people at the Water Development Board and the legislature working on it. But something else to consider is, not only do we have problems with irrigation districts, but Senator Perry was concerned about aging infrastructure in cities. For those of you that are policy wonks and saw what happened in Flint, Michigan, there was a really bad lead problem where people got sick because they were moving water through aging pipes that had lead. They were 75 to 100 years old. So he asked several groups to study their infrastructure. And I'll just use Harlingen as an example. Harlingen did their due diligence. Little old Harlingen, Texas needs $260 million to renovate their existing infrastructure. That's not new capacity. That's just to come into compliance in the next 10 years and avoid any issues with lead or any other problems. That's alarming. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm probably going to misquote this, but somebody told me that the overall state number is like 500 billion. And if Harlingen's 250 million, that's probably right? And for every year, Senator, that we don't address that, construction costs go way up, right? That's another issue we have. Sometimes awards happen from the state or federal government, Senator, and then the money doesn't get allocated for a year. Oh, by the way, now it's 20% more for that one construction project. And localities don't even have the ability to bridge that difference. Scoring is an issue. That is something we hope we have addressed. We have problems qualifying in the Rio Grande Valley as economically disadvantaged. That's incredible, given our history and our demographics.
You know, you're exactly right, and that's what part of the why this forum is here, and thank you for bringing it up. Commissioner, as we get in our second round of comments here toward the end of our session, are those the kind of things that keep you up at night, Commissioner? I mean, you have your zone, but you're really doing this as a regional project.
I thought I was being put in time out for talking too much. So thank you thank you for letting me grab the mic again. There are a few things. One thing I want to touch on that Rep. Lucio said just a few minutes ago is a lot of times we don't qualify under like a BCA. You just don't get it down here because of valuations of property and things like that. So sometimes we don't meet those scoring metrics like other places would, like a Houston or Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. The other thing that I wanted to mention about this project, because some of the other comments that were made, is that we don't qualify as a typical water project. Even though this, just like I said, it's innovative. It's never been done before. It doesn't qualify under the traditional Texas Water Development Board, SWIFT, EDAT, those types of programs. It just doesn't qualify. We were dead last when we submitted this for potential funding. So one of the asks for this session is to help us get that qualification in there somehow. We don't know if it'll be through the FIF, through the flood infrastructure, because it does qualify in there, putting it in as a qualified project under an innovative type project, or create some sort of a bracket type program. And again, I'm not well versed in state regulation, but if there could be some sort of a local bill that allows us to qualify this project under a modified type of scoring system, that may help us get to the finish line. Because it's really ironic that the Water Development Board funded this and then we don't qualify under their program. So it's very ironic as far as the way that goes, and we can't do it without support from our legislators, because the Texas Water Development Board cannot change these rules by themselves. They need guidance and they need some support. And then just one last point, we're not a traditional water supply. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, we don't do what Steve does over there at North Alamo. So we're new to this ballgame, and we're trying to do this the best we possibly can. But we know that with each 5 million gallon water plant, we're going to be able to service about 20,000 people a year, and that's significant. That'll make a difference, and we can use some of that water that might otherwise be used for consumer use for agriculture, and replace, just swap it out, because it will be a solution for our area.
Dante, when we go to the Viva Fresh or other agriculture conferences, right, we have a huge contingency of Mexican business owners, and sometimes people think, well, these are just Mexican crops, but a lot of that is U.S. interests farming in Mexico, and so they're kind of challenged as well.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I mean, the Rio Grande Valley has 1.3 million citizens. We are not the only last users of the Rio Grande River. Our friends in Tamaulipas and Nuevo Leon also have this problem. Chihuahua, Mexico, as was referred to by Mike, have built these reservoirs and they're not letting go of the water unless it spills over. And so Tamaulipas, Nuevo Leon, they have a partnership with a lot of our folks here in the Rio Grande Valley. And so they too are without water. So you're talking about another 2 million people on the other side of the border who are also facing this issue. So you're talking about an entire international region that is looking for solutions, because we are already amidst the problem. The problem isn't down the road. It's not over the horizon. And I apologize. I know that we were talking about this isn't doom and gloom, but it is doom and gloom. I have a lot of farmers who are in a bad situation on both sides of the border. Without water, we don't have a future here, and it is very, very difficult for us to project into the future if there is not this resource available. So yeah, it is impacting the US side and the Mexico side, and this region has really grown up as a result of principal industries being oil and gas, manufacturing, and agriculture. You've got more than 9 billion pounds of fresh produce crossing just here in Far Texas. That is a tremendous number, and you have seen hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars invested in this valley with several, I think it's 170,000 jobs related to fresh produce imports. And so if we don't see water come through, you're talking about not just the 9,000 Texas jobs here for this industry, you're talking about the 170,000 related to the importing also at risk.
Wow, that's really puts it in perspective, because there is 2 million, 2.5 million people just on the other side of the river. They're also using the water. Mike, last one before we wrap it up. What is it with the car washes, Mike? Can we stop at the car washes? We can stop permitting those, right?
I see you going to the car wash every day.
It was recycled. It was recycled. Ask the commissioner. All that water was recycled.
When you always look at it, there's always a business reason. And anyone, if you take a look at the business model for the car wash, you can see why they're doing it. I mean, there's some cities that are stopping them. And, Edinburgh's one. And we've had some discussions in Michigan about doing that. And we're going to have to start looking at tighter regulations of how we end up doing our business. And water is very limited. And you take a look at water, and I mean, it's going to get probably more expensive than you're paying for gasoline. I mean, you can't exist without water. And we've had some tough decisions. All the cities have adopted a water conservation plan, and through the leadership of our county judge, all of the cities are pretty much on the same sheet of music, along with the Rural Water Supply Corporation. And so if we reach certain levels, we're going to get tougher on development. We're going to get tougher on our price. I'm going to tell you, the best thing to stop people from wasting water is you raise that price. And I'm sorry. I mean, I've done this for a long time. And if you want people to stop doing certain things, you raise the price or you fine them. And then all of a sudden they start doing it. What do we do when people are speeding down the street? You put the police officer out there with a radar gun, and you start issuing tickets, and all of a sudden everybody's going by the speed limit. And I think that's what we're going to have to eventually do if we are very successful in finding all the source of water. We will figure that problem out, but it's not going to be what we're paying right now. It's not going to be the $2.25 or the $2.75 per thousand. It's going to be $4 or $5. And I'm a big believer that you can't go from $2.50 to $4 overnight. And so I'm always telling people you raise it a little bit every year so that you don't shock the public. Because what happens when we raise it too high very quickly? I no longer have Mayor Nori, and I don't have Commissioner Gerlach and Councilman Gerlach, and then what happens to me? And that's just the reality. Then we're gone. So I think we have to start educating the public that the cost of water is going to start going up. And the problem with the infrastructure is a real problem. Every city I worked on are having problems. McAllen's having problems with their manholes and aging infrastructure. And so I was in Harlingen before I came to McAllen. And so is Weslaco. And we're having the same problem here. And so if we don't start addressing the infrastructure, and we're expecting some help, senators, from the state, but we know it's not all your problem. We have to help part of it. We're asking just a little help from the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. We have just a couple of short minutes, so we might be able to squeeze in 2 questions here. So I'll open up to the audience for questions. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for the panelists and for your discussions this evening. My question is regarding the new agreement under the U.S.-Mexico Treaty. When the agreement increased the total acre feet of water volume being reintroduced to the Rio Grande, does that also correlate to an increased allocation volume for our side to pull from the Rio Grande?
Eddie, you want to take that? Or Dante, you want?
I think the question is, what happens if they don't deliver? My request of the State Department was, we never failed to deliver water to Mexico via the Colorado River. And I asked our western states to withhold deliveries in proportion to what Mexico withholds deliveries to us. And unfortunately they said, hey man, your problems aren't our problems. And it was very hard to hear that and to leave Washington, D.C. having heard that. I went with a delegation to Mexico, and to Mexico City, and our biggest ally is Tamaulipas. They're hurting just as much as we are when water doesn't get delivered. But until the State Department and our can do what Mexico does to us and show them that they're going to be held accountable, I don't think they'll ever take the treaty as seriously as they need to and as reliably as we need them to.
Dante?
So, there it goes. So it's funny you mentioned that. Sam and I were actually in the State Department, and we had that very same conversation last year, and that was the same exact answer. So I think they've got some sort of 4x6 car, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what we say. So to clarify, Minute 331 didn't actually add any new acreage. What it did is added a new tributary, or actually added 4 new tributaries. Those are rivers that flow into the Rio Grande that could help Mexico comply with the treaty. But I'm going to go back to what Eddie said. The problem is you don't have a mechanism for non-compliance. And that's why Mexico for 34 years has not complied. Because there is no obligation for them to do so with a consequence, right? To speak about what you're saying, the Western 7, the Colorado River flows down these Western 7 states, and anytime the United States of America is short delivering that water to Mexico, we pay them a check. Every time since 1944. For the last 34 years, we have only seen Mexico comply with the treaty once in a 3-year span, and it was in 2012 when they had monsoons fill up the reservoirs in Chihuahua, and someone said it spilled over. Chihuahua said, yeah, we can't keep all this water. Here you guys go, here's your payment for the treaty. Once in 34 years. We've got to see the execution of that treaty change. Has to happen, and that has to happen at the federal level. But it can certainly help if we have the state of Texas, the Senate and the House, issue resolutions to the federal government and say, hey, this is hurting our people. This is hurting the future, because it's not just the Rio Grande Valley. You've got pecan farmers in El Paso, Texas that are going out. You have entire communities down the Rio Grande Valley that have the same problem we have, no water. And so they're moving where? They're moving away from the river, further north into Texas. So this is an issue that doesn't just impact the Rio Grande Valley. Lack of treaty compliance is impacting all of Texas.
It'd be nice to hear from the private sector on this when these issues come up. The giants, the HEBs and so forth, for them to go to Austin and also say the same thing. They haven't done that.
Amen.
Okay, look, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and wrap this up. It's getting close to 7:30, and we want to be able to move to have a really nice dinner here with y'all. I want to thank each and one of the panelists, Commissioner, Mr. Lucio, Dante, Mr. Perez. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with us your thoughts. I think it was very enlightening, and we appreciate it. One round of applause, please, for our panelists. Let me also thank a couple of folks who are here. One is Dan Silva and the partnership. Thanks to you and your team. Naomi, you're here. Thank you for helping put this together. I know it's been a labor of love going up to Austin in freezing temperatures and inviting folks. Thank you very much for doing all that. Alex, you were here with the creation of this building, and of course, we love the work that you're doing on the commission. Thank you for being here as well. Really appreciate it. And anyone else I may have missed, sorry. But let me, thank our team at the EDC for all their work. They're standing around, hovering, sending me messages to move along and things. So we appreciate you, all of you who are working here. Bree, Kathy, Joe, Stephanie, Imelda's here somewhere. Belen, who am I missing? Judy's here as well. Hey, Judy. And then we have a couple of board members here. Our board chair, Richard, please stand up and be recognized. Carl Davis is here also from our board. There's Councilmember Jessica, thank you for being here as well. Councilmember Marissa, thank you. Of course, the mayor's here. Yeah, did I miss any other board members that were here? No, I don't think so, right? That we're missing? Okay. Yes. All right, we got enough, right, for all of you. Belen, tell us what we're doing next.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Mission and welcome to the Seed. I'd like to invite everyone to please put your jackets on. We're gonna head out to dinner in our beer garden. Everything that you see featured today, from the refreshments, the beer, the cocktails outside, the dessert, dinner, is all provided by local Mission staple businesses.
Yeah.
So as we walk out, our staff will be available to escort you out the doors and lead you to dinner. We invite you to go by the tents that are set up as you exit and pick up your plate of award-winning tacos from Annalise Taqueria. Have a seat under the tent, get warm, get cozy, and enjoy the rest of the night. Bienvenidos. Oh yes, and please, a word from our mayor.
I'm a real fan of fun facts, and today I learned a really fun fact that I want to share with all of you. I had a conversation with Richard Garcia. He is a 30-year member of our appraisal district here in Hidalgo County. And when he started on that board 30 years ago, the tax base for the Hidalgo County was $3 billion. And I was, wow, $3 billion 30 years ago. That's great. But you know, here in the Rio Grande Valley, all throughout this region, we are poised to be the next biggest metropolitan area in the state of Texas. And I'll tell you why. 30 years later, we are at $87 billion in Hidalgo County. We're not talking about Perez, Star, Willacy, we're not talking about any of those counties, just Hidalgo County. So that is my fun fact for today. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the rest of the evening.